What I want to start with is you took a road trip from Washington, where you live, all the way down to Orlando in Florida, which seems like the ultimate American road trip. What was that like, and what did you get out of it personally?
It was cool. It was the first time at that point we'd been out of the house in months. So, it was just like we got this rental vehicle and on a Saturday morning, packed up all our gear and just started driving down the highway and, kind of taking in all the sights of America and getting into the real, rural areas and stopping at truck stops. And truck stops here are really fascinating because you can find so many things you would never find anywhere else. It's just it's a different world, but it's cool. It's fun. It's fun to experience all that. But we were also just trying to beeline it for the studio. So we didn't mess around too much. And we made the trip, I think, it was under 3 days.
Oh, wow. That's quite good. Yeah.
Yeah. We were like sleeping very little. We just were like, let's get to the studio, make this record.
Okay. Because, well, one thing, and I don't know if this is a saying or not, but there seems to be this idea that traveling is kind of an antidote to ignorance. And then obviously you've traveled a lot in your lifetime, but especially seeing your own country and seeing all these different people. I don't know how much then you got to see of that, but does that help you understand your country better?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I'm a firm believer and advocate of getting out of your bubble and, having the opportunity to tour the world and see different places in the world and experience different cultures. That's really, I feel like, helped me as a human being on a number of levels, but then also my own country, because this is a very unique country. And I'm sure it's this way in any country. When you leave the urban areas and you go into rural areas, it's very different, and vice versa. It was interesting because though I was born in Boston, Massachusetts as a kid, after my mom remarried, we ended up in a very rural, we lived about a half hour outside of town, out by the mountains. And so that was initially like stepping back into, a bigger city was just like, it was really intimidating. And so, yeah, it's just, I love getting out of your comfort zone. I just think it makes you just more of a well-rounded human being.
That's an interesting way of thinking about things, because if we go then to your new solo record, is that you going back to your comfort zone or getting out of your comfort zone?
Well, that's a great question. In a way, kind of going to my comfort zone. Right. I mean, the things I do on the solo records, that's kind of like where it's closer to a lot of the music I absorb and have absorbed for a long time. I love a lot of American roots music. I love there's just something about a lot of that I, especially as the years go on, when I was younger, I was listening to more riff-based music. That's the thing. You're an angry young man, and that kind of captures that. But then you get to a stage, you're like, this is kind of interesting. What's this? And you start to take that in. So as the years have gone on, the things I do in the solo realm are probably closer to my musical DNA at this point.
That's interesting, because what I thought when I listened to the album, and there's quite a bunch of slide guitar on there, and now I know you play that yourself, and you're a well-documented, really great guitar player. But is that something you picked up over the years, or did you already know that from your youth?
I kind of established that in the late 90s. So there was this artist named Chris Whitley, and once I discovered him, I spent a lot of time absorbing his music, and he played slide, but not like the orthodox, like a lot of slide players. They kind of do the same thing, and he had his own angle, and it was genius. It was brilliant. He thought about it more like a songwriter, and so for me, it was discovering him, and then listening to I got to know a guy named Warren Haynes, plays in Government Mule, and that, you know, stood on stage next to him a few times and would just watch him do what he did, and I was like, oh man, you know, that's amazing, and so, you know, kind of feeding off of that to inform, you know, kind of inform me and how I would approach the slides. So yeah, it's just been kind of an ongoing thing, and the solo records let me explore that.
As a quick connection then to the record, you mentioned Warren Haynes, and now I have to pick see which song this was. I can't remember, but there's an intro. I can't remember which song it was again. But Sifting Through the Fire. It has somewhat of a Allman Brothers type of intro, guitar wise. So was that an inspiration?
You know, it's funny that I hear it now, and as I was writing that song, that was a song that was like the genesis of it. I got up, had some breakfast, drinking some coffee, and just started kind of noodling around, and then that do 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 do, and I was like, oh, that's kind of a hook, and I'll harmonize that, and after I had started the demo process, and I stepped back and listen with fresh ears, like, yeah, that's definitely got like an Allman Brothers vibe, and it's fascinating how that works. You know, a lot of times I don't go into something. In fact, I never do. I never go into something and say, I would like to write a song that sounds like so and so, because I think that's dangerous. You know, I want to just like, I want to write whatever is just, you know what it is. I sit down, I put my antenna up. And what's the universe going to tell me today? What am I going to pull out of the air? And I kind of feel like, in a lot of ways, as a songwriter, all you're doing is taking information that already exists in terms of, there's only 12 notes. And then it all kind of comes into your subconscious somehow, and then you kind of put your filter on it and put it back out there. And it's always fun to step back and go, oh, I can hear, you know, elements of this or elements of that. And but I never sit down and intentionally go, oh, I want to write, because I think that's, I don't know, it just doesn't seem fun. I just want to see what happens.
Yeah, it's the unknown is more exciting, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to take just a quick little step back to the kind of conception of this entire solo album, because were you planning on doing the second solo album before the whole COVID thing?
I was. Okay. Yeah. In fact, I did. I was kind of, you know, I knew I'm booked like 2 or 3 years in advance with all the projects. And I knew that there was something, there was a record that was supposed to be made around August. And I remember talking with my manager and in February of last year and saying, oh man, I don't know how I'm going to find the time to make a record, because we were supposed to tour. You know, we had dates in South America and Asia. And then he's like, well, you're going to get it figured out, you know? And then 2 weeks later, the whole world shuts down. And I was like, all right, well, I guess I have plenty of time to write a record, and just immersed myself in the process. I'm horrible. I've said this a few times now. I'm a really bad compartmentalizer. So I prefer, as a writer, to have the ability just to sit down with no distractions and nothing pressing. So I really wanted to utilize the time the best I could.
Right. And it feels to me, and this is just my kind of interpretation, but that the Year of the Tiger, that was an album that you had to get out of you. That was very close to you, about a thing in your life that was very important to you. And now with the second one, it feels like you're looking a little bit more outward and more free in a way. Is that fair to say?
Well, I'm definitely reflecting. This is more of a reflection record in terms of looking at the world, in which so many records are, and then just, you know, putting it through your filter and like, here's my interpretation of the universe. Whereas the first solo record, yeah, that was essentially a therapy / journal entry. You know, you're working through things. But that phrase working through things, there's a lot of uncertainty and frankly a lot of, I think, concern for kind of dark possibilities. And I think I was working through that as well on this record. You know, there's like just looking at everything and going, this is unique. I've like, how do I make sense of all of this? And because, yeah, like I think everybody, when you're living in times where things are changing very rapidly, there's that concern for, whoa, where is it going? And so I was just trying to make sense of it. And so it's still personal, you know, it's not like it was just some very, there was no emotion. There's plenty of emotion in these songs for me.
Sure, and then I suppose with change, it's also where do I fit in this new world or in this new conception of the world?
Exactly.
So writing an album like this, does it help you? Did you kind of figure it out a little bit? And I'm sure it's an ongoing process and there's no end point, but did it help you understand the world as it is now better?
Well, I don't know if it helped me understand. I certainly don't know if it helped me understand where I fit in. I'm still trying to figure that one out. I think we all are, Sure. But it certainly helped me express things and kind of crystallize things. It's very much the same thing as if I used to journal write all the time, and I stopped. Interestingly enough, I stopped journal writing when I started songwriting. So once I really got in, so it's been decades really, because it fills the same need of just putting pen to paper and purging yourself.
Right. What if we because we don't have the time to go through all the songs individually. So if is there one that when you started this whole project that immediately kind of the lyrics kind of came to you?
A lot of them, they kind of, you put up that antenna as you're writing the music and the melody, and a lot of times the lyrics will just kind of happen. Okay. The first track, Get Along, was that way with the chorus. I had that I had that chord, that guitar hook for a little while, and I thought initially it was written as kind of a lead line, and I'll oftentimes record it just to say, oh, that'd be fun in a solo or something. Then I listened back and I was like, that'd be a good hook for a song. So then once I started down that road, I remember sitting in my living room with an acoustic guitar, like, well, let's build around that now. And I was da-na-na-na-na, and I had that, and then, why can't we all just get along? And it just kind of came out, as the antenna went up. That was what the universe put in my little brain. And right. So it came quickly in that sense. Then the trick was, where do you go with that narrative? And so that was, then that takes a little bit of massaging.
And I think after time, that song in particular took on quite a significant meaning, because I read that it was inspired by kind of the Rodney King aftermath. But then now, obviously, we have George Floyd, and finally, the guy's been convicted, at least so far. So is that a big shift in American culture, you think? Or is that very significant that even though evidence has always been around that these things were happening, that now finally people are being convicted?
That's a good question. I mean, it seems like things are changing, and I guess it remains to be seen how that will play out. I will say, going back to what you were referring to with that song, it was interesting because it turned out to be kind of prophetic. I remember after I wrote the song, which was like in March of last year, I thought, I don't even know if this will be because that lyric, why can't we all get along, was after I thought about, well, where'd that come from? Where'd I hear that? Well, that was from the early 90s. And I remembered the riots and how that affected me. And so I wrote a song kind of based on that, but with a broad enough stroke to where it also applied to just how humans interact, and my longing for people to get along. And so it was really fascinating when a few months later, all of this stuff happened, and suddenly the song was very relevant. And I mean, there's a lot of growing pains, and it's not just here in the States. It's just humans. We're still learning how to. I think for me, I just would like people. It would be nice if we could stop being as. There's like a tribal element almost with, and I just wish that we could kind of just come together a little easier, but I think it's going to take time.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think progress doesn't happen as quickly as we would like it to happen.
Right.
Sometimes. Well, let's talk about the album then, more fun stuff again. There is, like I said, a lot of slide guitar. There is that rootsy, bluesy. Now, you played jazz when you were younger. How much a part was blues of that kind of upbringing and that playing when you started out?
Yeah, so I think I was introduced to blues music, interestingly enough, by some gentleman from the UK. That's what's so funny is that Zeppelin they informed so many musicians, and it was just their interpretation of things that came from America. And so yeah, that was like one of the first solos I ever tried to learn was, the solo to rock and roll by Led Zeppelin, which is basically a blues, it's basically a 1-4-5. So, I think it's something that I've always appreciated. And I had an aunt that right around that time gave me a B.B. King's Greatest Hits. And that was a real eye-opening experience, hearing The Thrill Is Gone for the first time. So though I appreciate and went through a phase where I was doing more like fast lead guitar and working on technique and whatnot, I think when I heard more blues based players, that's when my heart was like, oh yeah, there's an emotion to that I really appreciate.
And for instance, a song like Love Raindown, does that just start with that little blues lick? Is that how a song like that comes together?
Yeah, that's one of two songs that was actually written a long time ago. And I had it in as I refer to, the song refrigerator that just sitting there. And I took the song out and looked at the expiration date, and it hadn't expired yet. So I thought, okay, let's put this on the record. And from what I remember, I was going through a phase where I was learning this new technique where you basically keep this pattern going with your thumb, and then you play a melody with your other fingers. And it was something I heard on a Eric Clapton record, the Unplugged record he put out in the 90s. And there was a song called Hey Hey, which I loved, which turned out to be a Big Bill Broonzy song. So it was kind of that inspiration and that technique. And I remember sitting down and picking up an acoustic guitar and and I was like, okay, all right, I kind of like that. I could maybe build a song around that, and that was the genesis of it.
It's interesting that you mentioned that, because I remember Eric Clapton playing an acoustic Stones in My Passway, where he talks about singing the melody this way and then playing the bass with his thumb and playing the. Do you still learn new things about the guitar? And you've been playing, obviously, like I said, you're a great guitarist yourself, and you've played with some of the greats in the world, I would suppose. So, do you still learn new things about the guitar?
Sure, I'm always trying to learn. I think that when you stop learning and stop being hungry for that knowledge, it'll get stale. So yeah, the beauty is that through social media, like on my Instagram, on my feed, I follow a lot of these awesome guitar players, and I'll just see their post that day and be like, wow, that's great. So, and I'll save it, and I'm like, I'm gonna learn that lick, and I love that. There's so many talented people. It's amazing.
Is there one thing on the record that you surprised yourself with? Like you said, you kind of pull it out of the ether in a way. Was there something that you were surprised by, that you pulled it out?
That's a good question. I guess maybe the title track, maybe the Ides of March. I mean, that was a really challenging track, and
my telephone is fine.
and what's interesting is that the genesis of the song was, I was kind of waking up one morning and kind of still in a sleep state, and I heard, "We'll just be on the blue horizon," and with no real lyric, but I just heard this melody and this chord progression, and I thought, okay, well, I didn't even intentionally put the antenna up yet. I'm still kind of sleeping, but clearly the universe just dropped something into my melon. So we should probably get up, because I think that could be something. And so that one, when it was all said and done, after chasing it down, I mean, that took a really long time. I was really happy with it. Yeah.
Yeah. I read that you were, that you described the process as cathartic, kind of, initially having that dream influence and then working through a quite difficult time to get the song finished. What made it feel cathartic in a way?
Well, I think the subject matter, because it does express a lot of the concern, especially when it was written. There were so many unanswered questions about where things could go in the immediate future. And so, yeah, I mean, when I listen to that song now, it's palpable. I can feel that concern and those questions. But where it was really helpful, not only just writing, getting to express that, but also getting to the end, which took the longest to find. That when it goes into the major key and I believe that we can change. Da, 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 that all of that, I threw so many different parts at that coda section, and nothing ever felt like it was big enough and grand enough to kind of balance what is stated at the beginning. And when that finally happened, I think it was by the summer. So the genesis of the song started in January of 2020, and then the bookend came about probably in June. And after writing that lyric and that melody, after that, the cool heads prevail in times of change. Once that line was born, and the hair stood up on my arm, and I was like, okay, this is what I needed to express, and this optimism in this crazy time is what I need for myself. It's a mantra I need for me, and hopefully someone will hear that and feel the same way. But I always want to be careful, because sometimes when you write a lyric that you're writing to yourself as a reminder, I don't want to come across as preachy, like I'm trying to convince people. No, a lot of this is selfish in the sense that I'm writing to myself because I know that we were talking about journal entries before. We were talking about how I stopped journaling when I started writing songs, because I basically could just put the things that I needed to say to myself in conjunction with a melody, and they become these mantras that you can play over and over and over, like in stride. Cool down, baby. You're going to burn out in time. That's to me in a lot of ways, because I've always been a little bit anxious, especially if I've had too many cups of coffee. So like it becomes very useful in my own life. And if someone hears it and they go, hey, that resonates with me, I can use that in my life as well. That's awesome. That's beautiful.
But that's what I was going to ask, because how magical is that part of it then? When you kind of write something for yourself as a reminder, yet then other people hear it and they find something in it and attach it to their own lives, and it helps them through whatever they're going through. That realization that you can affect people with music, how is that? How do you think about that?
It's that's probably the most. It's absolutely wonderful. But you also realize that you have, I hate to use the word responsibility, but you realize that the power of music, it's a powerful medium. And so when people share that, especially when I see people who take lyrics and tattoo them on their body, and you're like, geez, talk about a commitment. So, make sure you put in the time and write a lyric that means something to you, because it could mean so much to somebody else that they, put it on their body forever and ever. So, yeah, I mean, it's probably the highest compliment one can, when a fan or someone comes up and says, oh, this song, it did this, it changed my life, or I lost someone and this song helped me work through that. Yeah, music's powerful stuff.
Finally, then, when you release an album like this, and obviously you have been quite proficient in what you do, but that also, I suppose, breeds certain expectations. Do you worry at all when you just make an album that you want to make?
Well, it's tricky with you. So I was just thinking about this yesterday. I was talking with my manager, and he was talking about how he liked the record and how proud he was to be a part of it, and which means a lot to me. But this record, sometimes you make records where you feel like, whoa, where am I gonna go after this? That's one of the things, especially after doing this for years and years and years, you're like, oh, where do we go from here? So there is that. If your expectations are to keep going in different places and how to continue to reinvent and keep it interesting. But with that said, because of the creative process and how it really is kind of the foundation of who I am, more so than performing is great. I like to tour, but for me, it's about writing. I look at the music. For me, it's not the music business. This is the songwriting business, and so it's like I have to do that. I mean, I can go a little while without trying to create, but then it gets to a point where it's like, I can't exist without that thing. So once you're there, you just shut off all those little voices and it's ego. It's like, well, you got to top the last record, or you got to do this. And you're just like, you know what? You go hang out in the closet, ego guy. I just want to embark on a pure journey and try and tap into the universe somehow. And if I extract something that's important and ends up being of any merit, great. But I'm doing this for the process. I'm doing this because this is oxygen for me. And I can't imagine life without it. I really can't.
Right. Final question then. With as strange as this may sound, do you enjoy this period then, where your schedule isn't booked full for the next 3 years?
Yeah. I mean, it's been really groovy waking up in the same bed every day and having a ritual. Yeah, and it allows me the ability to hyper focus on the songs. I'm a horrible compartmentalizer. Like, touring is all about, you get out and you've got all these things you do, and then to try and fit in songwriting. And so I've got 2 hours here, I can try and write. And then you get in the groove and it's like, hey, knock on the door, you've got this in 10 minutes. And like, oh, you have to stop songwriting. So yeah, I've liked having some power downtime.
Well, it's well deserved, I think. Myles, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me.
Thank you. I've really enjoyed this a lot. Great questions.
Thank you. And yeah, I wish you all the best with the record. You are going to play some socially distant shows, right? So have you translated everything yet?
Not yet. We're going to start rehearsing here in a few weeks, and so it'll be interesting to see how it all comes together. But yeah, I'm excited. I'm
sure you'll figure it out. All right, Myles. Thank you so much again, and hope you have a great day.
Thank you. You too. Thanks for your time.